Hello everybody, this is Dr. Vishal Trivedi from Department of Biosciences and Bioengineering, IIT Guwahati, and what we are discussing is about the photosynthesis. And so far what we have discussed about the different discoveries by the different scientists, which are actually helped to understand the different aspect of photosynthesis. Subsequently, we have also discussed about how the light harvesting, how the chloroplast, the structure of chloroplast, as well as the different pigments which are present in the chloroplast. And then on the other hand, we have also discussed how the different pigments are coming together to constitute the light harvesting complex. And we, as we discussed with the last time, we have two different types of light harvesting complex, light harvesting complex 1 and light harvesting complex 2. And both of these, light harvesting complex 1 as well as the light harvesting complex 2, are working individually as well as in accordance with each other to receive the sunlight, and in this process they actually exclude the electrons from the photocenter, and this excluded electron from the photocenter is running through the different electron donor and acceptor. And ultimately what happen is that the electron transport chain or the photophosphorylation reactions or photophosphorylation reactions are actually producing the two different types of molecule. One is called ATP and the other one is reducing equivalent known as the NADPH. So the question comes is how many different types of phases are present in the photosynthesis, and we have discussing about so there are two different phases of photosynthesis. One is called the light reactions, the other one is called the dye reaction. So in the photosynthesis, it has two phases. A is called light reactions and B is called the dark reaction or the chemical reaction. Okay. So within the light reactions we have different steps, and we have already discussed about the what are the things are happening within the light reactions. So in the light reaction, what is happening? We are having the photolysis of water. So that is the first step in the light reaction. So the photolysis of water, as you remember, in the last lecture also we have discussed about this, that photolysis of water is catalyzed by enzyme complex known as the oxygen evolving complex. Or it's called OEC. So
Oxygen evolving complex is an enzyme which contains the manganese at their active site. So it contains four molecules of manganese.
So it contains 4 molecules of manganese, and manganese is actually a transition metal, and you know that most of the transition metals actually can vary their valency or transition states. Similarly, the manganese also can exist in 4 different types of transition states. What are these states? It can go from these 4 stages. One is called 2 plus, 3 plus, 4s, 5s, okay, 5 plus.
So because of this ability of manganese, the oxygen evolving complex utilizes this manganese to split the water into the two components. One is called oxygen and the other one is called proton. And in this process, the chloride as well as the calcium is also been involved.
So the reaction what is happening is this. So oxygen evolving complex
and manganese, then chloride, and then calcium, and as a result what you will have? You have a molecule of oxygen and 4 molecule of proton, and what else you have? You have the 4 molecules of electrons. These are the 4 molecules of electron which will go into the photo electron transport chain, and by doing so it actually will do the photophosphorylation and with the help of photophosphorylation it will produce the ATP and it will produce the NADPH. So, that is the second step. So, in the light reaction, first step is the photolysis of water. So, photolysis of water is done by the oxygen evolving complex, and it happens in a with the help of the transition metal manganese. So, because the manganese can go from different states, it actually can take up the different amounts of electron, and that happens in a multiple steps, that it removes the electrons from the water molecules, and as a result the water molecule get split into the oxygen and the proton, and the whatever the electrons has been excluded from the water is being received by the light harvesting complexes in the presence of light to catalyze the photoelectron transport chain, and that actually catalyzes the photophosphorylation, and that actually is responsible for generation of ATP and NADPH. So, let us see how these two molecules are being produced within after the during the event of photophosphorylation. So, as you can see on the given PowerPoint slide, the NADPH is produced by taking the electron from the photosystem 1, and during the formation of NADPH, what happen is that the photosystem 1, see the protons are being so photosystem 1 takes the sunlight, and then extrudes the electron from the photocenter, and that electron goes through from different electron donor and acceptors, and ultimately it goes to the ferredoxin, and ferredoxins are the iron sulfur molecules, and these ferredoxin are actually gives these two ferredoxin actually gives these 2 electrons to the NAD plus, and with the help of another enzyme complex known as the NAD plus reductase. So, in the presence of NAD plus reductase, the ferredoxin actually give up its electron, and the NAD plus is getting converted by taking the protons from the matrix side to NADPH. So, the final reaction what you see is like this. Ferredoxin, 2 molecules of ferredoxin, so this is electron actually, and see NAD plus, and then it get converted into NADPH plus H plus. So, here you have 2 molecules of H plus, and the enzyme is NADP reductase, and you are going to have the ferredoxin back. Okay. So, ferredoxin, which actually contains electrons, then transfer that electrons, and in this process it assimilates the proton with the NAD plus with the help of enzyme known as NAD reductase, to produce the NADPH, and this NADPH is downstream being used in the light reactions to produce the chemicals, or it will be used in the chemical reactions. Apart from the NADPH, the ATP is also produced, and ATP is produced by an enzyme complex known as the ATP synthase. So, as you can see on the given slide, that actually explains the production of ATP. So, the production of ATP is being explained by an hypothesis given by the Peter Michel, and this hypothesis is known as the chemoosmotic hypothesis. According to this hypothesis, during the process of photosynthesis, the large number of protons are being accumulated within the lumen of thylakoid membrane, and these lumens, so there are three sources of protons which are responsible for accumulation of proton within the lumen. The source number one, which we already know, is the oxygen evolving complex, by which the water is being split into the proton as well as the electron, and the oxygen is evolved in this process by the photosystem 2. Okay, and so from the photosystem 2, we have a oxygen evolving complex, and that splits the water into the proton, electron as well as the oxygen. Oxygen goes out from the chloroplast, and whereas the proton is getting accumulated within the lumen of the thylakoid membrane, and the electrons are gone through the electron transport chain, which involves the photosystem 2 cytochrome BF complex as well as the photosystem 1. Apart from this, the some electron carrier also pick up the electrons while this all this is happening, and it also releases the protons into the proton into the lumen of the thylakoid membrane. The third source is the NADPH reductase itself. So, as we discussed that NADPH reductase is actually being used to produce to combine the NAD plus H plus to produce the NADPH, and in this process also some amount of proton is being generated within the lumen of the thylakoid membrane, and all these accumulation of all these proton actually generates a proton gradient, because you know that in the biological system the differences of the concentration gradient always causes a gradient. So, because of low level of proton present outside and the high number of proton present inside, these protons have a tendency to go out of the thylakoid membrane. But because these are charged particles, they cannot go passively along with the membrane. So, they need a way to come out, and the way that they can come out is that they can use a membrane bound complex to come out into the matrix. And in this process, when these proton comes to the matrix with the help of the membrane bound complex known as the ATP synthase, they combine the ADP plus Pi to generate the ATP. So, now we will discuss about how the proton is being coming out from the ATP synthase, and how the ATP synthase is utilizing this potential energy to combine the ADP plus Pi to generate the ATP, which is being used in the dark reactions to catalyze the different types of chemical reactions. So, ATP synthase is a very big complex, and it is a complex of different types of proteins. So, ATP synthase is a membrane bound enzyme or enzyme complex. It mostly has two subunits or two components. It is called, the component number 1 or A is called as FO, and the component number B is called the F1. The FO is the membrane bound component, and F1 is the actual enzyme which is catalyzing the combination of ADP plus PI to synthesize the ATP, and that is not the membrane bound, that is in the free into the lumen. So, in the FO1 subunit, that is made up of three different proteins known as the A, B and C, whereas the F1 subunit is made up of different types of proteins, and these proteins are called as the alpha protein, beta protein. So, alpha, beta, gamma, delta and epsilon. Okay. So, there are 3 units of alpha, 3 units of beta, 1 unit of gamma and 1 unit of delta and epsilon. And if you see the arrangement of the ATP synthase, it is like this. So, this portion is the FO subunit, and then after that it has a ball like structure, and this is the F1 subunit. Okay. And within this ball what you have is, so this is the C protein, then you have B and this is called A of FO subunit. Okay. Whereas, in the case of the F1 particle or F1 subunit, you have the alpha, you have the beta, and that alpha and beta actually alternate with each other to make this ball like structure. Then they have a gamma in between. So, this is the gamma, and they, apart from this, they also have the epsilon, and so this is the structure which is responsible for converting the ADP plus PI to ATP. So, let us see how this happens. Okay. So, if I show you the structure, the working structure of the ATP synthase. So, ATP synthase, as I said, has the alpha, beta and gamma subunits, and these are actually the subunits which are actively participating into the catalytic mechanisms. So, in the catalytic mechanism, what we have is so we have alpha, beta, alpha, beta, alpha, beta. Okay, alpha, beta. So, we have alternate arrangement of alpha, beta, and in the middle we have the gamma. Okay. So, this is the middle balloon like structure what you have seen earlier. Okay. And this, if I show you the beta subunit. So, beta subunit, and this is the so beta subunit has 3 catalytic site. Okay. Or its catalytic site can be modulated in 3 different ways. So, it can actually be modulated by the conformational changes induced by the gamma chain. So, it has three different types of conformational changes. One is called open conformation, the other one is called loose conformation, and this one is called as tight conformation. So, what happen is that the open conformation or the open site is actually the active site when it can receive the substrates. So, this open site actually gets the initially ADP and PI. So, they come and bind to this site and then they loosely there is a conformational changes in the beta subunit because of the movement of the gamma chain, and as a result the ADP and PI goes and bind to the loose binding site. Okay. As soon as they bind to the loose binding site, the gamma subunit also again induces the conformational changes, and as a result these two molecules comes and bind here in a tight conformation, and once they bind in a tight conformation, the coupling reaction takes place between the ADP and PI, and as a result they both get combined and it generates the ATP. So, in the tight conformation, the ADP and PI actually get combined to each other and generates the ATP. As soon as the ATP is generated, again the gamma chain is inducing a conformational changes, and because of that the ATP which is bound very tightly in the tight conformation, the active site changes its conformation. As a result, the ATP comes out because the active site conformation is now in the open conformation, and because of that ATP is released and the new molecule or the new series of ADP and PI comes in. So, this cycle continues for several rounds, and as a result it actually assimilates the proton energy which is being used to generate the to couple the ADP and PIs to generate the ATP. Now, the question comes, how actually this is happening? We can see a small clip of a movie to understand that. So, this movie is being provided by the Professor Walker and who's a professor in MRC, and what you can see here is in this what you see is the complete the ATP synthase, and what you can see is actually a rotating rod actually. So, this rotating rod what you see the pink color is actually the C chain of the FO particle. So, C chain is actually in the which is actually integrated within the plasma within the membrane, and that rotates on keep rotating, and because it rotates and the gamma chain is attached to or is attached in coordinates with the this particular C chain. So, as the C chain runs, it also induces the conformational changes in the gamma chain. What that is what you see in here as a cyan, this cyan, the cyan color or yellow blue color protein, and the top portion what you see is the yellow and the red color proteins are actually the alternate arrangement of the alpha and beta subunit. So, in totality in the ATP synthase what you see is actually the C chain C protein of the FO1 particle which is integrated within the plasma membrane, and that is rotating, and it is because of its rotation it induces the conformational changes in the gamma chain which you see in the blue color, and that conformational changes is also being directed towards the alpha and beta chain. So, what happen is once the proton comes out from this ATP synthase, because the proton has the potential energy, it once it runs through this particular protein complex, it gives a kind of the mechanical energy into the C protein, and that allows the C protein to keep rotating in the membrane, and as a result it actually gives the conformational changes throughout the molecule, and these kind of conformational changes are being used. So, now what you see is actually the 3 different conformation of the beta chain. So, what you see now is actually what you see now is the open conformation, and in the open conformation the molecules are not binding. Okay. So, the active site is relaxed and it can actually bind the ADP and PI. As soon as it happens, you can see that the blue is actually making a conformational changes, and because of that the beta subunit is turning its active site first into the loose binding site and then again into the tight binding conformations, and because of that it actually coupling the ADP and PI and generating the ATP. As soon as the ATP is formed, the active site is getting converted into the loose into the open conformation, and as soon as it get open into the open conformation, it gets it releases the ATP from the active site. So, we are not going to get into the detail of how the bonds are forming and how the ADP is getting coupled to the PI to generate the to ATP. So, with this we have discussed about the light reactions, and so what we have discussed is that the production of 2 reducing equivalent, one is NADPH and the other one is the ATP, and these 2 reducing equivalent will be used now into the downstream dark reactions. So, in the dark reactions, so the purpose of dark reaction is to utilize this light energy to produce the sugar or the chemical molecules, so that can be used for further downstream synthetic processes, and that will run can be used to produce the energy and run the biological activities. So, the dark reactions the dark reactions are being discovered by the scientist known as the Kelvin and its group, and these are a set of reactions which are having mostly the 3 important components. So, in the dark reactions are also known as the Kelvin cycle. Why it is called as the cycle? Because the reaction happens in a cyclic manner, and because they have to trap the carbon dioxide which is present in the environment, and because of that the Kelvin cycle has 3 important steps. What are these steps? Kelvin cycle has 3 important steps. One is called carboxylation. So, as I name suggests, the purpose of carboxylation is to trap the carbon or to trap the CO2 present in the environment. So that it can get converted into sugar. Okay, because you need a entry of carbon into the system, and then only you can utilize that carbon to produce the different types of sugar molecules. Then number step is the so these are set of chemical reactions which will then use the carboxylated products to generate the sugar. So, in this process you are going to generate the sugar and the sugar related derivatives. And the third step is that since you have generated the sugar and the purpose is salt, that you have generated whatever you are looking for, taking the carbon dioxide from the environment, but since you have to continue the cycle so that the incoming carbon dioxide will still be available, you have to regenerate the starting material. So, all these events we are going to discuss individually. Okay. So, now what you can see in the given a PowerPoint slide. So, as we discussed, these are the three different reactions. One is called carboxylation. So, the carboxylation steps, it will trap the carbon dioxide which is present in the environment. Then we have the glycolytic reversal, that actually will generate the sugar which are being which can be used for producing the polysaccharides and the other kind of biomolecules. And then since these molecules are generated, our purpose is salt, then it can be used, some of these sugar molecule can be used to generate the starting material. So, in this case the starting material is the ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate, or the commonly known, or in short form it is known as the RUBP. So, ribulose 1-phosphate is combining with the carbon dioxide, and this reaction is being catalyzed by an enzyme known as the Rubisco, or in long form it is known as the ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase. This is the enzyme which is widely and universally been known, universally been found in the environment, and this is the only enzyme which is the largest abundant enzyme in the living world. So, Rubisco actually catalyzes the carboxylation of ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate to form the 2-carboxy 3-keto arabidinol 1,5 bisphosphate, and 2-carboxy 3-keto arabidinol 1,5 bisphosphate is actually intermediate, and in the presence of water this complex actually get broken down to form the 3-phosphoglyceric acid, and 3-phosphoglyceric acid is actually a 3-carbon sugar, and because this is a 3-carbon sugar, the Calvin cycle is also known as the C3 cycle. So, as soon as the 3-phosphoglyceric acid is formed, the 3-phosphoglyceric acid is being converted into as soon as the 3-phosphoglyceric acid is formed, the reaction for the glycolytic reversals are starting, and there are 3 steps in the glycolytic reversals. So, 3-phosphoglyceric acid is being phosphorylated with the help of the ADP, and in this process the phosphoglyceric acid is getting converted into 1,3 bisphosphoglyceric acid, and this reaction is being catalyzed by an enzyme known as the phosphoglycerokinase. And as you can see in this reaction, the ATP is being used. So, ATP is getting converted into the ADP, and the PI is being used to phosphorylate the 3-phosphoglyceric acid. And this is the first step where the ADP is being used, and this ATP is actually coming from the photophosphorylations. Now, the 1,3 bisphosphoglyceric acid is being reduced by enzyme known as the triose phosphate dehydrogenase, and this reaction requires the NADPH, which is being produced within the after the photoelectron transport chain, and the 1,3 bisphosphoglyceric acid is getting converted into the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate. You can see that here also the NADPH which is being used is also coming from the light reactions. A small portion of this glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is then undergoes a process known as the isomerization. So, what is mean by the isomerization is that it get converted into its isomer, and this isomer, the isomer of the glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is the dihydroxyacetone 3-phosphate, and this reaction is catalyzed by the triose phosphate isomerase. And other portion of glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, either of these, the dihydroxyacetone 3 phosphate or the glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, both isomers are going through under a condensation reaction with the help of an enzyme known as the aldolase to form the fructose 1,6 bisphosphate. The fructose 1,6 bisphosphate then undergoes a process of hydrolysis, and this reaction is catalyzed by an enzyme known as the phosphatase, and as a result the fructose 1,6 bisphosphate is getting converted into the fructose 6 phosphate. The fructose 6 phosphate can be get converted into its isomeric component, and that is known as the glucose 6 phosphate. So, glucose 6 phosphate then and this can be done by an enzyme known as isomerase. Now, the glucose which is formed, that glucose 6 phosphate, can be having the multiple fates. The glucose 6 phosphate can be get converted into the glucose, and that this glucose can be used into a downstream energy driven process to produce the energy, and that energy can be used for running the metabolic reactions or metabolic processes. Similarly, the glucose 6 phosphate can be get converted into the UDP glucose or the ADP glucose, and once they get converted into the UDP glucose or ADP glucose, they are ready to be get be used for the synthesis of polysaccharides. So, the polysaccharides then can be a storage material that can be stored into the plant, or they can be utilized whenever there is a requirement, because the polysaccharide can be get converted into the monosaccharide such as glucose, and that glucose can be used for producing the energy or for other kind of processes. Now, the third step is, which is very important, is the regeneration of ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate, because if you do not regenerate the ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate, you are actually going to not going to continue with the cycle. So, that is the third event in which the ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate is used. So, in this process what happen is the fructose 6 phosphate, which is actually being formed here, and the glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, which is formed here, they both come together and go through combine with each other to form the one molecule of erythrose 4 phosphate and one molecule of xylulose 5 phosphate. So, once these two molecules, the fructose 6 phosphate and glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate comes together, they get combined with each other, and after that they generate two molecules, one molecule of erythrose 4 phosphate and the one molecule of xylulose 5 phosphate. And the enzyme which catalyzes this reaction is known as the transketulose, and as well as it requires a cofactor known as the thymine pyrophosphate or the TPP. After this, the erythrose 4 phosphate get combined with the dihydroxy 3 phosphate, which is actually a isomeric form of the glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, and by this condensation reaction it actually produces the pseudohaptulose 1,7 bisphosphate, and this reaction is catalyzed by an enzyme known as the aldolase. Once the pseudohaptulose 1,7 bisphosphate is formed, it is being this also reacts with the glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate, and glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate then react with the glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate to form the one molecule of xylulose 5 phosphate and the one molecule of ribose 5 phosphate. So, pseudohaptulose 1,7 bisphosphate, which is formed from the aldolase, is then goes for the hydrolysis process, and that actually generates the pseudohaptulose 7 phosphate, and the pseudohaptulose 7 phosphate then goes for a condensation reaction with the glyceraldehyde 3 phosphate and that produces the two molecule. One is called cellulose 5-phosphate, the other molecule is called ribulose 5-phosphate. So, from these two molecules, the cellulose 5-phosphate as well as the ribulose 5-phosphate, the ribulose 5-phosphate is generated by catalyzing the isomerization reaction or the epimerization reactions. The enzyme in the case of cellulose 5-phosphate is known as the epimerase, whereas the enzyme in the case of the ribulose 5-phosphate is known as the isomerase. So, ultimately the ribulose 5-phosphate is being formed by the cellulose 5-phosphate as well as the ribulose 5-phosphate. Once the ribulose 5-phosphate is formed, then it goes for another round of phosphorylation with the help of the ATP, and the enzyme is the phospholipase kinase, and this step is requires the ATP, and this ATP is also coming from the light reactions, and that actually produces the ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate, and as soon as the ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate is formed, it actually is ready to take up the another molecule of CO2 to continue the reaction. So, as you can see in this cyclic reactions, the carbon dioxide coming from the environment and being assimilate to produce the sugar as well as the other downstream molecules. So, if I show you the complete reaction mechanism and what are the products are being formed. So, during this complete process of C3 cycle, you have the following output. So, if you take this reaction and if you take this cycle and goes for the sixth round, you are going to assimilate the 6 carbon dioxide molecule. For the 6 molecule, you need 18 ATP, and apart from that, you also need the different enzymes which are participating in the C3 cycle, and as a result what you are going to generate? You are going to generate one molecule of glucose. So, this is the glucose, which is actually the sugar which you are going to generate. You are going to generate 18 molecule of ADP, which is being coming from the ATP. Okay. And you are going to generate the 18 molecule of free PI, okay, because ATP is getting converted into the ADP, and you are going to generate the 12 molecule of NADP plus. Okay. So, these are molecules are ready to being combined by going to the light reaction again. So, with this we are going to conclude our discussion about the photosynthesis, and so with this we are done with the light reaction as well as the Dicke reaction, and in the subsequent lectures we are going to study about the different variations in which the carbon dioxide can be assimilated from the environment, and as well as the different factors which are actually going to influence the photosynthesis, and how those can be modulated to achieve the better productivity by exploiting this process. So, with this we are going to conclude our lecture here. Thank you.